Son is in 4th grade. School is only open on Mondays. The rest of the week he is home with me. They don't do virtual learning during the rest of the week. No Zoom calls are made. No teacher actually checks in. Homework at home is not to be sent back to the school, and instead they get a participation grade the following week if they tell their teacher they completed it. It's backwards, and your students aren't being graded for the work they actually do. Every Monday we get a new flyer in the mail asking for donations. Last week we got a flyer that said to send out 20 emails to individuals to ask them for donations, with the promise of prizes for participation. They also had other prizes on this flyer. Basically, the more people who donate using your name, the bigger the prize you get. My son wanted the headphones prize. Nowhere on the flyer did it say how many donations was needed. I called the school to ask and they said 12. I sent out the 20 emails. 14 people donated. The donation list was to be emailed to the school with the student ID, and we were to pick up the prizes this past Monday. Son was losing his mind excited because he got the 12 donations needed for the headphones. We walk in and they proceed to tell me and my son that he did not qualify for the prize because in order to be eligible, you needed to get those 20 donations. Apparently the prizes for donations started counting after you received the 20. They turned damn near every student away, not just my kid. So I sent the boy out with his father and pulled the teacher and principal aside to let them know that they got these kids' hopes up for absolutely nothing, and that all they accomplished was destroying the children's spirits by lying to their faces. I then told them that I was told by the secretary that he only needed 12 donations for those headphones. They said, "Sorry you feel that way. This is just how things are right now due to COVID." So I responded with, "Oh, so lying to students and breaking their spirits is okay because of COVID? Failing to provide virtual learning for the rest of the week like other schools is okay because of COVID? Asking for donations when the kids are only here once a week must be okay, too, right?" I then walked out. Well, my son got the headphones in the mail today with a note from the superintendent that said, "I'm very sorry for the actions of the school system and the confusion formed around the donation drive. We are trying to work with the families, not turn them away. Please accept this as an apology." My son is over the moon. My husband says that I was being a Karen and that we should have just dropped it because it teaches our son that life isn't fair, and that I now look like an helicopter parent. I have 3 fingers missing on my dominant hand. It's fine. I can type and everything and even manage to tie my shoelaces most days, and on the days I can't, that's the dyspraxia. However, I won't deny that it looks a bit odd to most people. I only have my 4th and 5th fingers, so my hand looks a bit like a child's drawing of a rabbit, and not a good one. I'm used to people asking about it, usually after staring for a good minute or two, but I still find it annoying. I really don't get why you'd think it would be an okay thing to ask someone about, but hey, I wasn't raised in a barn. Usually I nip the questioning in the bud by just explaining the truth from the get-go, and assuming that enough people will gossip about it that the message will spread by the end of the day. It always does. Anyway, I started a new job about a month ago, and I honestly could not face going through that same cycle again. I felt like the time had come to not play into it anymore and to make something out of it, and I decided to make myself laugh. When the first new coworker asked about it, I completely lied and told her that I chewed them off as a baby. I then decided to tell the next person who asked that I cut them off with a plastic knife at a picnic. And the next person that I was born with 6 fingers and they removed too many, and so on. All genuinely ridiculous reasons, but I'm a good actor and they actually believed my stupid lies. I didn't expect them to, a plastic knife, through bone, but there you go. Maybe they just thought there's no way I'd lie about how I lost my fingers. Within about 3 days, I learned that my coworkers had been arguing about the actual reason, and it seems like a lot of them now actively dislike me for lying to them. I'm probably going to have to make some cupcakes over the weekend with my super cool 3D printed adaptive whisk to get back into their good books. Anyway, I told this story to my brother today, and he told me that I was an asshole because I caused tension within the office on my first day, and made people feel stupid for being gullible and believing my lies. My argument is that I'm not the asshole because they were asking a rude, albeit common, question, and because I didn't do it with the intention of deceiving them. I was just honestly fed up of the question and didn't think they'd think I actually severed 3 fingers with dental floss when I was 3. I'll accept my judgment, though. Not cool to ask people why they lost limbs or digits just because you want to sate your morbid curiosity. A few reminders for people: I'm not a male, don't know why everyone assumed that. Don't ask people about something that could be traumatic, especially when you don't actually know them. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem. And though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me he had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. 2 things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single, and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple, and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to, this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action, seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. I am a 22 years old female, have an older sister, 25 years old. My sister is very sensitive about everything. When we were young, if I made the smallest comment like, I prefer pink over blue, it would make her cry because she thought I was aiming at her by saying it. My parents would always ask me to apologize to her since she's sensitive and I'm emotionally stronger than her. My parents never controlled my sister's diet growing up, letting her have what she wants since they found it too difficult to control her. I was skinny as a stick when I was a kid. So even though my family has a long history of thyroid disease, my parents didn't think there was an issue with me. However, my sister has been overweight the majority of her life, so my parents thought she'd be the one with the thyroid issues. They took us to an endocrinologist when I was 10. I got a diagnosis for Hashimoto's thyroiditis while my sister didn't, and instead got told to exercise and watch her diet. I got hypothyroidism due to Hashimoto's, and have been on medication ever since. My sister and I moved back in with our parents due to what's happening these days. I leave my medication in a cabinet near the kitchen since I know I won't take it unless I have to actually get out of bed to do so. Apparently, I left a box before I moved out of my parents' house when I was a teen, and one of her friends saw it while they were over and asked if it was hers. My sister told them that it was, and that's why she was overweight. The box has Euthyrox written on it in big bold letters with a little picture of a thyroid gland next to it. So, yeah, pretty obvious it was meant for a thyroid condition. She's held up this farce for almost 4 years. I only figured it out when I saw her take a box of it out of my bag one day. I confront her on it, and she starts crying and telling me that she just didn't want anyone to mean to her because she's fat. She also says that it's not fair that the one with the normal weight gets the thyroid disease. I tell her to knock it off, and that she can't lie to get sympathy from people. My parents talk to me later, and they say that I was too harsh calling her a liar and she probably needs a therapist or something, and the classic, I should apologize since I'm more mature. They even tell me that they were hoping that she was the one with the thyroid issues as a child, so that they could justify her weight gain. I ask them, so you wanted your daughter to be sick instead of admitting that it's your fault because you bought her McDonald's whenever she wanted it, and never made her exercise? Now they're mad at me too.